Hey Stampers, Kim from stampingandperfection.com. Welcome to my craft room. I want to share a card that I'm making with Catherine Pooler's latest release. It's called Flutters and Blooms, and the particular card set I'm using is called Grace and Bloom. And you can see I've already stamped the large floral image from this stamp set onto a piece of white cardstock, and I stamped that in Catherine Pooler's Midnight Black using my MISTI. And now I'm going to color it in with my Altenew artist markers. I'm going to use the set B from the Altenew collection. And to start with, I'm just going to put a spot of color on a piece of scrap paper from each one of these markers, so I know what they actually look like on the paper, and which order from lightest to darkest I need to go. And this particular set I like because it's got this set of purples, it's got a set of yellows, and it's got a set of grays. So I'm starting out with the darkest purple here. It's R705, and I'm just going to use that marker, and I'm just going to do the top layer for now, and I'm going to go around the inside of the center of the flower and along the edges of each one of those top petals, just where it looks like they're overlapping. Now I'm taking the second darkest color, R823, and I'm going over the top of the color I just put in and extending it a little farther out into the petal. I'm also now flicking some of the color from the center out, and I'll take the next color, which is R702, go back over what I've already colored, and I'm trying to blend them nicely. So I go over the line that I created, and then I pull this color out a little bit farther, hoping to pull some of that darker color with it as I flick from the center out here. And on the little petal, I just do really tiny little flicks, and I'm just going to continue that until I have the whole thing done. And I'm leaving a lot of white space on this first pass through. Then I'm taking the lightest color, which is C002, and again I'm going over the edges, trying to blend the last line I made, and I'm flicking out from the center, trying to pull out some of that darker color. I sort of want a gradual change in color from dark to light as I go out. I don't love to see the lines from one color to another always. Sometimes I do, but I don't want to this time. So I flick that out. I've still left a little bit of that white. So I went from dark to light. Now I'm going from light to dark. So I pull that R702 back out, and this time I'm just flicking from the center out, trying to like flick that color a little farther out. Now I'll take the R823 and do the same thing. I'm just flicking out from the center. Now, and I'm adding a little bit of the colors where the petals overlap. I want to show that it would be darker in those places. Like, I'm by no means an expert colorist. This is just one of the techniques that I play with once in a while to see how it turns out. So now I've taken the lightest color, and now I'm filling in everything I didn't fill in before, and I'm going over what I colored before, trying to just blend the colors nicely. So I've got the outer petals done. I'm going to do the same thing now with the smaller petals that are behind, and I want those a little darker. So I've got that R705, and I'm going along the edge and in that little dip between each of the petals, and also in the corners there, the outer corners of the petals, I'm coloring those big ones in a little bit, carrying the darker color up a little bit farther. Now I have the R823 again, and I'm just flicking that out because these are super small petals. There's not a lot of room for color, so I'm just flicking that darker color out a little bit, and that dark color is very dark. Now I'm taking the R702 and just going over it and trying to blend the lines and pull the color out a little bit, and I'll use the C002 to fill it all in and go over it and smooth it out a little bit. And those outer petals turned out super dark, so later I will actually add some, oh, actually, I'm going to do that now. This is WG07, and I'm adding some gray right in around the edges of the center and the edges of those um, petals on the outside, or on the inside of the flower. Just, I want to give it a little bit more dimension. Like, I really want to be able to see it. And I think that this always helps me get the dimension that I'm looking for. So you can see I'm just putting it around the edge of each of the petals, along the center of the flower. And it just makes it pop a little bit more. I kind of like that touch. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit, and I'm going to come back and add some white gel pen to the center. The center is already very dark because it is a solid stamped center. So I want to lighten that up a little bit, but I'll let that marker dry. I want to go ahead and do the buds, and I just pulled out the R823, and then I'm going to use the C002, and I just did the R823 around the edges of the bud petals, and then I'm just going to fill in the rest of it with that letter color. It's just too small to mess around, so I'm sorry, I'm pulling this in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. I always forget I can do this. So now I'm pulling out those 4 yellows, and you can see that that one is pretty brown and the next one looks sort of caramel. And then I've got my beautiful warm sunshine color. I love that color. And then the very light one. So I'm going to use those on the other flower. So I'm taking the darkest one, which is Y823, and I'm again going around the edges of the petals and around the edge of the center. And I don't know what happened there. I went over it with the Y612 just like I did before and flicked it out, and now I'm using the Y205 to go along the edges of those 2 colors that I used previously, and then I'm flicking that out toward the center, so I'm pulling some of that color into the center. And by going over it like this and then extending it out a little bit, it blends the 2 colors together that I have there to start with, and then it helps this third color blend in with them. So I'm doing that to each petal. I'm still trying to leave some white space on the petals that are big enough to leave them. And I'll take the lightest color, which is the C001, and I'm just going to fill in the rest of that and then go over what I've already done, because that actually really does help to blend the colors when you go over the top of it. And again, I went from darkest to lightest, and then if I feel like it needs more shading, I'll go back from lightest to darkest. But I think I'm just going to leave this one here like that. And I'm going to pull out the second lightest gray. This is the WG03. It took me a long time to get brave using the darkest grays. I always started out with the lightest grays when I did this, and I got a little bit of dimension, but I feel like being brave with the darker colors really does add a lot more dimension to my flowers when I do this. And you don't have to do this, but I kind of like the way it defines things a little bit more and makes them pop. It really looks like some things are in front of others. All right, so now I'm going to pull out some greens. And oops, I forgot the buds. I always forget the buds. So I'm pulling out my Y205, and I'm just using that Y205 along the petal edges and the bottoms there. And then I'm going to put a little bit of darker in there. So I pulled out the Y612, which is not the darkest color. Like, the darkest colors in this set are very dark. And I'm just going to take the lightest one, the C001, and just fill the rest in. And it's going to give me a nice blend. Like, I like the way this turned out. I feel like the colors blended beautifully. I got dark where I wanted dark and light where I wanted light, and I still forgot to finish those other 2 buds. So I'm just going to finish those up. And ordinarily I would save the white gel pen to the end, but I'm kind of anxious to see how it looks. And they already had like the pistils and stamens in there, so I'm just trying to get my white gel pen to work there. And I'm just going to just make some circles and dots on the inside petal. I want to lighten that up. And then I'm just going to flick out toward where those pre-colored or pre-stamped like pistils and stamens are, and I'm going to just flick and put a dot on the end and add some extra dots in there. I'm going to do the same thing on the purple flower. It's especially pretty on the purple flower, and I'm just doing light flicks, trying to lift my pen as I go. Where the pen stops is where I stop. That's what Mindy Baxter always says if you take any of her classes at My Creative Scoop. Where the pen stops, you stop. And it's good advice. And I'm just going to put some dots, and that brightens that whole center up so much, doesn't it? Like, it's just really crazy how it does that. I put some small random dots around just because I like the way that looks. If you don't like that, don't do that. You know, I think one of the things I'm trying to, like, I've taken a lot of classes with different people, and I'm trying to find my own style. Everybody seems to have a different style, and I take ideas and style tips and marker tips away from every instructor that I've met, and I'm trying to sort of combine them into something that works for me. And you have to figure out what that is. And I've noticed that I use different techniques when I'm using my Altenew markers and different techniques when I use my Copic markers. Now, I pulled out set E here because the set B had no greens in it, and the set E has a nice set of 4 greens. This is the darkest green in the set, G935, and I'm just putting that like right on the stem below the flowers where the little stems meet the larger stem, on the tips of the leaves and the base of the leaves. I'm just kind of like, if I had a steady enough hand at this point, I would actually try to draw that line, a dark line, all the way down the side of the stem, but my hand is not steady enough and that stem is super small. So I'm just putting a few dark spots so that when I do my lighter ones, I can blend the dark color, because if you get the ink, if you get enough ink on there, you can pull that dark color down a little bit and get it to do what you want to do. That's why you go from light to dark and then dark to light, because you want to get a lot of ink so that when you put like the lighter colors on, they'll pull the darker colors out. So I am still leaving, notice some, I'm extending the dark spots that I just put on there. And in some of those spots, I'm leaving a little bit of white space. I'm going to take a lighter marker and pull the white into it. Okay, so I like this particular color. I think I forgot which one this was. I can't even see on the end of the marker there, but it's one of the yellowy greens. The rest of them are pretty yellowy green. This is either G915 or G804. And then I'm going to take the lightest color. Oops, nope, that was 915. Now I'm taking 804, and I'm just going to fill in the rest of it. I'm not going to even use the fourth color. I'm just using 3 colors here. And I'm just going to try to blend it all together, especially when I get to that larger leaf. I just want to pull the dark down in, and I want to blend so you don't really see lines. You see sort of a gradient of color. I just want to fill in all the white spots I have left. Now, this is pretty skinny. I don't get this done perfectly. Sometimes I get a smudge out of the line, but I have a solution at the end that cleans up the lines on my image, and you'll see that. Okay, not bad for an amateur. You know, I'm okay with this. The purple petal's a little light around the edges, but I don't know, I kind of like it. Nature's like that. Okay, so for the next part, I want to put a little bit more of, I was trying to pull the darker purple out into that petal more because it just feels too light on the edge. So I pulled out that dark R705, and I'm flicking up very lightly with, thin wispy flicks toward the more toward the edge of the petal. And then I'll take my R823, so darkest to lightest, go over the top of it and just flick that up. Sometimes I go over top of the flicks I already made just to pull that color up. Sometimes I'll go right next to it. It depends on what mood I'm in. So I'm just trying to darken that up a little bit. And then I've got the R702. And again, and each time I take the lighter marker, I flick up a little higher. So you can see that color is going up a little bit higher. And I will go fix with my gel pen. I will go ahead and fix that. The gel pen. I don't usually do the gel pen that early. I was just hoping, just trying to see if it made a difference. So this is the lightest color. I'm just going to recolor the entire thing again. I'm just kind of, getting the edges of what I just did to smooth them out, and then I'll just fill the whole thing in. And that helped a little bit. It's not so light. There's not such a huge contrast between the two. But I like the contrast because it makes it appear that some things are behind the other things. And flowers in nature kind of look like that too. Okay, so I've got this part done. I'm going to fix up my gel pen things a little bit so they look brighter again. I really like the gel pen touches. You can add a lot more touches. You can put highlights if you want to. Whatever your comfort level is, that's what you're going to do. And, you experiment and learn things. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I want to put a little background on this before I finish. And I often do a watercolor wash, but I didn't really want to do a watercolor wash. So now I'll just throw that paper out, by the way, that I used to just put the color swatches on so I could see what was happening. To add a background to this, I'm going to use a technique that I have been playing with, and I pulled out some of my blues, and these blues came from set C. So I'm starting out with the lightest one, and this is R902, and I'm just putting dots, and I'm putting them sort of close together and close to the flower. So this is the lightest color that I've picked, so those dots are going close to the flower, and there's going to be a lot of them. So it kind of gives it a background. And then I'm going to take the B002, which is the second darkest. I'm going to put less of those dots, and I'm going to extend them a little farther out. Not a lot. I don't have a lot of room there. And then the darkest color I'm using, which is B016, I'm putting fewer of these, and I'm putting those much farther apart. Okay, and I like that kind of background once in a while. I like a watercolor wash, but I just wanted to do something fun here. So I'm going to cut this down, and it's going to end up being 3.5 inches wide. I'm just getting rid of the excess white, and I'm going to make it 5.5 tall. My card base is going to be cut at 4.25 by 11, and then I'll score and fold that at 5.5. So this will be the whole length of the card front. And I'm pretty happy with that. One of the reasons I really wanted to get this particular stamp set was because it's kind of a perfect stamp set to practice your coloring techniques and your watercoloring techniques, because it's got big petals, and you can really practice the shading and stuff. So that was one of the reasons that I got it. Now I'm pulling out another stamp set called Happy Butterflies. This is from the Flutters and Blooms stamp set, and I pulled out the Thought of You Today sentiment because I think this is a perfect sentiment to send to someone right now. My mother will probably get this card because she is isolated alone, and I know that's actually really hard. So I'm stamping this just on a piece of cardstock that I trimmed off there. And what I really love about it is that it is script, which you'll see more later. I don't seem to be doing a very good job of showing you that right now. But you can see I used my MISTI. I did end up stamping it twice because it's a brand new stamp. Isn't that pretty? And I got some, I bought the package of Flutters and Blooms papers because I love the colors of these. I love the patterns. I thought they were so pretty, and I am going to end up using that little purple one that was right on top there. But look at all the patterns in this. Like, they're fantastic. They're just fantastic. I love having beautiful papers to pull out. And I almost exclusively purchase 6 by 6 inch papers. So I'm making this about 7/8 of an inch. I need it to be 3/4 or 6/8. I'm going to make it a smidge wider, and it's going to be 5.5 by 7/8. So that will fill in the rest of that card front for me. So I've got my card base all made. Again, 4.25 by 11, scored at 5.5. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on this piece. I'm going to glue this down to the left-hand side of the card. And I really like the way this paper goes with this particular set of markers. Now look, this is the back of that cardstock where I colored the flowers, and look at all of the, it's supposed to look like that. You want that to, sorry that you can't see this here, but you want that to actually blend through the paper like that. That will actually make your, or help your colors to blend through. The more ink that soaks into the paper, the better your colors blend. That's what I've learned by experimenting. I got a little glue, I'm using liquid glue there, that Tombow Mono liquid glue, and I got a little bit on the card front, so I just used my adhesive eraser to do that. Now I pulled out some sequins and just placed them on the front of the card. Those are just placed there for now. You can see my little triangular tray. I really like having one of those because I pour my sequins in, and I'm just going to attach. I'm going to fuss with this a bit till I decide where I want it. It's always so hard to decide, and I'm just going to cut it off and add some foam tape. And I've watched other people do the same thing, so I don't feel bad about doing this. I'm going to put it all the way to the edge of the card. That was a good choice. I like the way it looks. So I just cut it at a jaunty angle, put a piece of foam tape on the back, and then attach that to the card right to the edge. I always like at least one side to go to the edge of the card, and I think it looks pretty overlapping both of those pieces there. And then I'm going to pull out my multimedia mat and my quick stick. And this is always how I do my, I love this quick stick. And this is, you know, whatever tool you have that works for you, this one works for me. So I use it. I know people use a lot of other things, but one of these will last me like a year, and then I can get a new one. I actually have like 3 in my drawer. So I finished doing that, and here's how I clean up my lines. I have, this is the EK Success journaling pen, and I really like this. It's a super fine black tip, and it works really well. Some of the other journaling pens, I feel like I have kind of a heavy hand, and I feel like it is hard on the pen tips. This one can take it. So I'm doing every line on the stem, on every petal, on every leaf, and that actually makes it a little bit brighter and finishes off. So that's going to complete my card. Stop on my blog at stampingimperfection.com, give this video a like, and make sure you subscribe and click that bell to get notifications of whenever I post a video. Thank you so much for watching.